All right, what Bible version should we be reading? I already know I'm going to get a lot of rap for this, but I really don't care because I really believe in what I'm saying, and unless I see things different, I'm going to preach my faith. Uh, but I'd like to start off with a story. I had a friend from Pakistan. I met him he was speaking one time, and I went to see him, and I kind of clicked with him, and we got to know one another, and we went to travel and speak at different places after a while. In fact, travel to different countries together. And I remember a conversation we were having one time in our car, and we were going down the road, and we were back and forth with the scriptures and God and talking. And I remember saying, "Oh, hold your horses," and I started to explain, and he said, "Stop, stop," and he shook his head, and he says, "What do you mean, hold your horses?" He totally did not understand what I was saying, and he caught me off guard for a second. I had to laugh because even though he did know the English language, he did not understand that idiom, what we call idioms like hold your horses or it's raining cats and dogs, and because he was taught words and how to put them together. But when you start with idioms such as like raining cats and dogs or hold your horses, you have to understand the idiom in order to get what I'm trying to say. In other words, stop, stop, just hold the phone. Another idiom. But my whole point of that story is I learned a lot. When you meet different people in different cultures, the language changes. It changes over time. We don't talk like we did 500 years ago. They use idioms and usages of words different than we do now. I mean, no matter what you believe, you have to at least know that. Well, these new Bible versions that are coming out, and I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of them I feel are extremely beneficial. In fact, I am a walking testimony in my own body to stand here and tell you that in my understanding of the scriptures, was completely opened up when I opened up and started looking into these different versions. Because for the first 15, 20 years of me trying to learn the Bible and understand it, I read the King James Version only because people told me it's the one and only version that we should be reading and anything else is out. And now it's the very last thing that I believe. I don't believe that at all because uh, I can't say as I was introduced, but one day I was reading a version and I just noticed how simple it was to read, and it happened to be a New Living Translation. Now, a New Living Translation is more of a paraphrasing version. If you study on the internet or different types of versions, you'll have word for word versions, you'll have thought for thought versions, and you'll have paraphrasing versions, and you can kind of get what each one of them are for just in, a paraphrasing version is going to paraphrase it. And no one's going to tell me that oftentimes that's not beneficial. What what I've learned over the years of studying, especially after picking this New Living translation out and reading it, I set off to say I'm going to get one of these. I'm going to get a study one where it's got the maps and the footnotes, and I'm going to read it. And believe it or not, I believe it took me close to 7 years to read from Genesis to the end of Revelations and read most all the footnotes and look at the maps and study them. It took me 7 years. But I will tell you, 20 years prior, 15, 20 years prior to doing this, maybe 15 years, I was a teenager when I started picking this King James Version up and reading it. Once I picked up this New Living Translation version and read it, my entire world opened up to what the Bible said. I mean, from Genesis through Revelations. That doesn't mean I understood everything about the scriptures, but let me tell you, I know myself. I understood the story of the Bible. And what do I mean that by saying that? The story of the Bible. I understood the scriptures like I never understood them before. In fact, I could put myself in conversations that I was lost prior to that. And now not only was I lost, when I would get involved in these conversations, I would question people, and people would be like, I don't know, I didn't read that part or this part. And do you know what I think? I don't think all the time, but I think a lot of times it's because there are so many people hell-bent on reading that King James Version only, nothing else can happen, or you're reading the wrong version, that they're incarcerating themselves because there is good technology and there is good intelligence in putting these Bibles together that are modern, and they will help you understand the skeleton of the Scripture. The Scriptures are a story. They're a story, a great story. It's been said that they're not just a story that's told, but it's been the only story ever told. When you understand the core skeleton, and when I say the skeleton, that's what I mean. Not every crack and cranny and depth of it, but the skeleton. How these stories relate one book to another. Where are they in history? Where did they happen geographically? And even most importantly is, what does this have to do with me now, right now, me and my life, the life of my loved ones right now? And until you understand the core concept, just the concept, the basic foundation of the scriptures, you're never going to be able to plug them into your life and apply them for what I believe God meant for them to be. And I read that version and I learned a lot about it. No, that's not to say I don't go back to the King James Version and say, hey, I'm going to go back, because I do believe the King James is extremely accurate. However, that was written 500 years ago. They have the New King James, I prefer actually, because it talks more modern. And then you have the New American Standard, which is what we call a word for word Bible, and it not only talks more standard, it's a Bible that takes the idioms and it pulls them apart, and it talks the way we would talk, so we wouldn't have to be confused as to what does this mean and what is this, I don't quite understand this, and well, this means that. If I tell you the story about the three bears, and instead of using porridge, I use cracked oats, and you're saying, no, it has to be porridge. Well, that's up to you. And why do I get a little angry? Because I'm a personal testimony of this. It has helped me so much, just opening my heart and seeing it in other versions. Now I'm actually reading it in multiple versions. But I do always go back to either a King James version or a word for word version. It helps me. It has helped me. It has opened my world up to the Bible. So don't be scared to go out, I'm sharing with you, don't be scared to go out. Somebody will say, oh, they took this from the original manuscripts. Well, you ask them, where did they take some of these new Bible versions? They're going back to the original manuscripts. And they're taking out the idioms in the old way they used to talk, plugging in the new ways. So many people are undermining our resources. And I would like to close in saying one thing that kind of boils my blood is the fact that there will be people that'll learn a little piece of the Bible, then they'll learn the Hebrew root of it, then they'll learn the true definition of how it came from the Hebrew or the Greek and what this all meant, and they just know everything about this one little subject. And if you ask them, go to a different portion of the Bible and you ask them a story, they won't even know what you're talking about. It is important, first and foremost, to understand the core story of this Bible and how it relates to us today. Afterwards, you can go in and you can study pieces and parts. Now, if you disagree with me, I don't have a problem with that. I'm sharing my faith. I want to thank you for listening. And if you're going to ask me which Bible version I prefer, at this point in time, I read the New King James. But then when I go to work, you're going to laugh at me, but when I go to work, I have an audio one of the New Living Translation. So when I wake up in the morning, I'll read 2 or 3 chapters of the Bible, one maybe if it's long, and then on my way to work, and I'll read it in the New King James, and then on my way to work, I'll listen to what I read audibly in a paraphrasing version, such as the New Living. Again, I'll do it because oftentimes it says, okay, now that I know what it says in a more modern language, let me read it again back there, and it just opens doors. So I personally wouldn't get all bent out of shape because someone says, oh, you have to read the authorized versions. Let's do some critical thinking. Who authorized it that was different than you and I? I'll tell you who authorized it. People with 10 fingers and 10 toes, just like you and I. So that's my faith as far as which version we should be reading. Thank you for listening.